It's going to be a bit of a cliche to say it's had a seismic effect. It really has had a massive, massive hit for the drinks industry, particularly when it comes to consumption location. Obviously, with the lockdowns globally affecting the on-premise channel, and no one being able to go out to the pubs and bars or restaurants that they would like to frequent, consumption has obviously moved into the home.
And do you expect, I suppose I could call it a bounce back, but what I mean is, will people start going out to drink?
They will, but not at the speed that the industry would prefer, I fear. There's going to be a lot of tentative feelings amongst consumers who will be understandably uncomfortable about venturing out of the home under the circumstances of, a second, third, fourth wave of COVID. So the trend of drinking at home, which has always been there, but now it's been sort of solidified, and now there is diversification amongst consumers of what they're drinking within the home.
You talk about diversification of drinking. Tell us more about that.
It's less a diversification amongst what brands or what categories consumers are drinking. It's more about the price points that they're drinking in. When the lockdowns came into effect towards the tail end of March, what we saw was a lot of stockpiling and consumers reverting to tried and tested brands rather than experimenting as they had been keen to do sort of pre-COVID. So what you've had happen there is the well-known established brands have seen their volumes increase and subsequently their sales, whereas the higher end, certainly the more expensive, more experimental offerings out there, and this applies across beer, spirits, wine and soft drinks, that has kind of shrunk quite rapidly. There will, however, be a sizable bounce back as consumers look to indulge once again after the better part of 4 months of being stuck in the home and worrying about whether they get paid or whether they're ever going to leave the home again.
You say a sizable bounce back. Is that certain?
Yes, I think it is. What we've seen in China, which obviously is ahead of the rest of the world, is you've seen luxury companies such as Moet Hennessy, which is owned by LVMH, that's Louis Vuitton. They only operate in luxury. They saw a sizable spike in their sales once lockdown lifted. Effectively, what you had there was consumers wanting to celebrate. Now, is that sustainable? I don't think it is. What we'll see is just a return to the equilibrium pre-COVID a little bit further down the line. Will it also offset the loss of sales during the lockdown? Again, I don't think it will, but it'll make for a healthy summer.
What kind of trends have been appearing across Europe in terms of drinking?
It's a very generational trend that has been going on since time immemorial. What you have is, as a younger generation of legal drinking age consumers come through, they're not interested in drinking what their parents drank. So the best example is American whiskey or bourbon. In the US, for example, you had our parents' generation who would, the fathers would, have a beer and a bourbon. And now what you've got is consumers coming through and they're less interested in doing that. And that's just generational. Now, what we've actually got with bourbon is the current generation of 18, 21 to 30. They're really interested in bourbon again because it's skipped. So you have that generational trend that's always been there in drinks. And it's cyclical. You can kind of see it coming. Gin is in now. Will gin be in a generation's time? Probably not. Will it be back in the generation after? Probably.
So at the moment, the fashionable drinks, in Britain and perhaps in Europe, gin, vodka, craft beers especially, almost everywhere seems to be producing their own craft beer.
Yes, gin, definitely. That taps into the sort of experimental trend, wanting to try something new and also avoiding what your parents drank. Craft beer, similarly. is looking not to drink those mainstream lagers or ales that parents drank. Now, the problem with both gin and craft beer is that many of them rely on provenance. They make a big deal about where they come from. Now, that works within the region where they come from. However, try to break that out beyond the region and try to go national, that's going to be quite difficult. So if there's a reliance within the brand and the brand proposition of making something about that provenance, that kind of handicaps you a little bit.
Okay, we've talked about alcohol. What about non-alcohol drinks? Have people seen any healthier trends during lockdown?
The health and wellness trend was well on its way prior to the coronavirus. It's picked up very much over the last 4 months during COVID, for sure. Now, it's difficult to say whether that will have accelerated the trend of health and wellness, because, like I said earlier, we're going to have a spike of celebration and indulgence, and to hell with health and wellness for a bit there. So it's going to be an interesting few months for that trend.
And what are you drinking, Olly?
As a drinks journalist, I try to temper it. I'm a big craft beer fan. I like my gin, but I don't think you can beat Scotch whiskey.